Hello everybody, and welcome to Whiz, your family-friendly podcast where we discuss D&D Onslaught, Dice Masters, HeroClix, and the other entertaining games made by Wizkids. I'm WizDad. I'm that Christmas present for Aunt Rita that you've been putting off getting. Do you think she will like that generically named candle from Cracker Barrel? Does she even know what to do with a bath bomb? You only have 1 week left to decide. I will be your guide for navigating the competitive and casual scenes of the Wizkids Triforce of gaming. It's Mashup Monday. Today, I'm doing a 2023 and kind of an overall retrospective on the Wizkids D&D Mini lines. Yes, I've never really talked about them before, but what better time than the present? But before we equip our long swords and leather armor and jump headfirst into the Forgotten Realms, let's check out the Wizkids Progress Report.
Kowalski, Progress Report.
I feel like I start every Wizkids Progress Report of, hey, there's not much to talk about, but it is the beginning, it is the preseason, the end of the year, not really a ton coming out or decisions being made. A lot of people are on vacation, especially at Wizkids, and there's not really much to go on. Just keep in mind that there have been releases in December. I hope everybody's having fun with any Christmas-related events that you might have, whether it's Onslaught, HeroClix, Dice Masters. I know locally we had a Christmas event for HeroClix, and I unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but we always try to do a fun thematic event, kind of like Halloween. The end of the year, we usually try to do a Halloween / Thanksgiving / Christmas, like 3 different events that is more casual based, digging out figures you may not have played in a while, and play them in a fun either PvE or PvP type of scenario. So I hope everyone is having a fun time with that. Now, I'll use this to give a little bit of news about myself. Obviously, next week I will not be doing a Mashup Monday because it will literally be Christmas. I will be recording on Wednesday because I'm off all of next week, so I'll be able to record a Onslaught Wednesday next week and this week. But just in case you were curious, I'm not going to do a Mashup Monday on Christmas. Sorry, there's probably not going to be much to talk about before then anyway. But just as a reminder, as far as releases for this month, everything has been released. That will be released this month. So if you have not received it, if you haven't gotten your Spider-Verse OP kit, your Royal Flush Gang Storyline OP kit, definitely check it out. I know some people have gotten that bag of Starfights on the solicits. It still lists as November. It doesn't have a date. I know for us locally, we had it on our invoice and we haven't received it. So I hope people have gotten it that wanted it. But, hope you enjoy those. They seem somewhat interesting. As far as Onslaught goes, I'm a little perturbed a bit that there's still nothing about Onslaught basically on the solicits. And if anyone's curious, I use the solicits to talk about release dates. There's nothing for 2024 for Onslaught. We know the Cell Swords is coming out supposedly in January, but if it's not on the solicits, that's a little concerning because how else are people going to be able to order it? So I'm going to send another message to the people I know at Wizkids and see if they can look into that and rectify it or something, because I want to make sure the game gets promoted and you can buy the product. But I'm super pumped for Cell Sword Set Part 2, which every time I record this, I remind myself that I have not scheduled the Ancient Construct event yet because we don't, the holidays is also a hard time to schedule. So, with that being said, I think that's going to be it for the progress report. There's really nothing to talk about. So, we're going to jump into Fishing with WizDad, where I'm going to go over and talk about some of the D&D Minis that Wizkids produces.
Get your gear, little man. We're going fishing. And I mean now.
Now, I know what you're thinking. WizDad, you never talk about D&D Minis. Well, that's true. I don't. Not that I don't love D&D Minis. Don't get me wrong. I love D&D Minis. I have quite a bit of unpainted ones that I really need to sit down and paint. But I haven't really talked about it because I couldn't think about how I wanted to talk about it. It's not something I would really talk about every week, even though there's basically releases almost every single week of new minis that are being released. But I figure, since I'm kind of going through and doing my 2023 reviews and talking about Wizkids as a company and releases, I would be remiss if I did not talk about D&D Minis, because that is I would say, I mean, we haven't seen, they don't produce or reveal their numbers as far as profits or whatnot. So no idea if like D&D Minis are a significant amount of like their business, but I would assume it's a significant amount, simply because they basically do all the minis for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. Don't forget Pathfinder has minis too, and WizKids does pretty much all of them. I believe there's other companies that might produce some, sure, but if you go into any comic book store, a majority of the things you're going to see in regards to D&D Minis is WizKids related. So let's talk about it a little bit. If you're not into Dungeons and Dragons, please don't turn off the episode. Listen in, because it is a very interesting game. I love Dungeons and Dragons. A little bit about me: I play every week in an Eberron campaign. We've been playing for about a year and a half now, maybe a little less than that. I've played D&D for years. I'd never really played with minis growing up because they just frankly weren't a thing. We would basically draw things on a map. We would have kind of a dry erase grid. We would draw things on a map. Maybe I would cut out some paper and, we would color in something, but we didn't really have minis growing up. I did grow up with first edition. My dad, I don't know if he ever played with his friends when he was younger, but I know when I was growing up, I found in like one of our closets the old first edition Dungeons and Dragons books, and I wonder if they're still there. I need to go look. The first edition Dungeons and Dragons books, and I remember reading it. I remember doing there was a little solo, not really a campaign, but a solo adventure you could do, and it's very, very basic. But I remember that's really what grew my love for Dungeons and Dragons. And then I got into high school, and in high school, you surround yourself with friends that have similar interests. And so while we played video games and did a bunch of other things more, every so often we would dip into 3.5 at the time. And we didn't really ever have a big campaign, but we had some fun adventures. Think of it like one-shots, where we would have just a night where all the guys would come over. We would play like Smash Brothers or Halo, and then we would also then transition over to, hey, let's play some Dungeons and Dragons for a while and create characters and run a little campaign and do a battle or two, and then ultimately forget the campaign because we all have ADHD or something. So we would it was a fun time growing into it. I then went to college, got married, had some kids, didn't really play for a while, and then I kind of reintroduced myself a couple of years ago as a DM and looking kind of during COVID. We're stuck at home, right? The thought of, hey, online D&D might be a good outlet, and so I got back into it, and I joined locally an in-person Eberron campaign, and I didn't know the people going into it, and now we're great friends, and it's a lot of fun meeting. One of the players has helped me, has learned to play Onslaught, and we play Onslaught occasionally. So it's interesting to, it's a great meeting ground to meet new people, like-minded people. It's a lot of fun just role-playing and having a lot of fun with people. So if you've always been on the fence about Dungeons and Dragons, definitely look into a local group. I know locally we have an RPG group on Facebook where people promote or say, hey, we're looking for a new player. You could always check your local gaming store if you're into it. They might be able to point you in the direction of someone who either is running maybe a newbie campaign or something like that. But it's a very flexible game, and they're about to come out with effectively is called 5.5. We're in 5th edition now. Effectively, it's a 5.5, but they're calling it 1 D&D because it's going to be a ever-evolving form of D&D. But I digress. That's a little bit about my history when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. But WizDad, what does that have to do with the minis? Well, so Wizkids, I don't know when they started producing the minis, but I would assume it's probably 2018 and before, probably well before then. They started really taking over the mini production of Dungeons and Dragons minis. Minis are just, they're all about the same size, unless they're like medium-sized creatures or larger. They all fit the same small base. When you buy one, you either buy one painted or you buy one unpainted. Unpainted, that means you gotta paint it yourself or just forever leave it the grayish color that it is. Painting, honestly, is not that difficult once you get into it. It's one of those you have to feel confident in yourself in doing it, because me, for example, I have a lot of pieces I could paint. I need to actually go and buy paint. That's maybe another episode we could talk about sometime, is learning to paint. But I always struggle with, well, I spent $10 on this. I don't want to ruin it by having a bad paint job. But when it comes to D&D Minis, unpainted is by far the most affordable. You can find almost any mini for any type of character you want out there. It probably exists, and Wizkids has probably made it. Painted minis, on the other hand, come with a premium. And we've talked about this a bit when it comes to Onslaught. Onslaught painted minis are one of the reasons why the core set and some of the other aspects of Onslaught is more expensive. Painted minis come at a cost. Because they're hand painted, it's a premium, right? So something that might cost $10 for a unpainted mini might cost $25 as a painted mini. And you see that out here when you look at some of their they don't have a ton of, I shouldn't say they don't have a ton. Basically, they have painted and unpainted minis, or I guess they call them pre-painted minis. And a lot of the times they don't do individual pre-painted minis because I feel like that is a harder sell, if that makes sense. It's harder to have just one pre-painted mini and say this is $20. Whereas if you have a box set of some sort, and sell it for $50, $70, whatever, you're more likely to sell it, in my opinion. It's a smart marketing move. So to go over the different products of what type of minis we're talking about and how Wizkids actually sells them. You have the unpainted minis, which come in just a 1-pack. So you can have, I want to buy some kobolds. There's a pack of 3 kobolds for like $10. And they're all unpainted. They're little small minis. They come off the base, but they have a little small, think of it like a button size black circle that you glue them on, and then you paint them. And that's so that way you could paint them before putting them on the base. But those are much cheaper, like I said. $10. Sometimes you can find them cheaper online for like $5, $3, $4. Usually retailers sell for about $10. Medium size is more like a 15-ish. We're talking kind of like ogres and, bigger bases, bigger figures, more substance to them. And then larger are typically $20 to $30 on painted dragons, giant owlbears, stuff like that. So that's kind of their entry point. Because they're unpainted. It's literally just they made the model, they packaged it, put in the little base for you. You could buy that, and so you could go out to like D&D. They have 2 websites. They have the WizKids online store, and then they have dndmini.com, which they're effectively the same thing. And so you could go out there and you could look at their frameworks sets, which frameworks is a little bit different. Those are unassembled minis. Those are one where you have options, where say you are playing a half-elf druid. Well, the frameworks comes with maybe different weapons the character is holding, different hairstyles, or different things that you can kind of piece together and assemble it how you want your mini to look. So frameworks are cool. They're $15 unpainted. I think honestly they're one of the best purchases you can make if you're getting into D&D Minis and you're looking for something specific for your character. Frameworks is a great way to start. If I were getting into it today, I would look for, okay, what do they have in my, whatever I'm playing, what do they have that is my character's gender and race? So male halfling, okay, they got male halflings out here. Well, what do they have for male halflings, right? Like what classes do they have? Do they have monks? Do they have clerics? And usually they have almost everything. I'd have to go out and check and see what they don't have, but like looking out here now, just on their D&D mini site, they have female elf wizard, human male warlock, and so there's a version with his hair flying. There's a version with just he's got like a hat on, one where he's carrying a sword for like the hexblade warlock, but there's another one where he's carrying like a skull staff, or if you're going more like a kind of a demonic power type warlock. And those are just kind of the entry points. That's the frameworks is kind of like a step up, I guess I should say, for an entry point. If you just don't care about the customization, you just want an unpainted mini in general, there's what they call the Nalzer's Marvelous Miniatures, and those are typically unpainted. So like there's a human paladin male, no customization, he looks how he looks, and he is $5. So very cheap. No assembly required. They're already primed, so the color they have on them is that grayish color. You can just paint right on them. And it's a great entry point. It's kind of how you get started with D&D Minis. Now, expanding upon that, obviously, WizKids makes a bunch of monsters, beholders, gargoyles, trolls, all sorts of stuff like that in the unpainted variety as well. So if you're a dungeon master, absolutely, you're probably buying some of this. I've got a bunch of those behind me that like I said, I really need to start painting to use in our Eberron campaign. I've been thinking about doing that for our DM anyway. Now, if you're not into painting, which is totally reasonable, they do have pre-painted minis, and like I said, they don't really do pre-painted minis individually. You might find like a you might find some out there. They do exist. They might be older. They might be Pathfinder specific. I feel like I've seen more where like they have Pathfinder minis that are painted, pre-painted, that are individual. So you can find those to represent your character if you're playing Pathfinder or D&D. But most of the time, what WizKids produces is these boxed sets. So if you're playing a Strahd campaign, Curse of Strahd, they have the Denizens of Barovia. And it looks like it's got like 6 characters in it, 7 figures in them, all painted. You've got, I can't even read it on there, but Vladimir, Hornguard, like key characters from the Barovia section of Curse of Strahd. You could buy that kit that has 7 characters in it for $40. They're all pre-painted. And now this is an older set. That's probably why it's this cost. I know a lot of them now are a little bit more pricey, but they do have these sets. And most of the releases they do now are set related. So for example, in 2023, let's talk a little bit about what they released when it came to D&D. They released a lot of unpainted minis. You have ones like, they have a bunch of Magic the Gathering ones they came out with early in the year. But then they came out with some Critical Role ones, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then they have, what are these? Some Marvelous Miniatures, Aasimar Cleric Female, some WizKids Deep Cuts. So that's kind of relating back to HeroClix a little bit. Some Orc Fighter Females. Like they've, if you look at the releases for Dungeons and Dragons, they are significant. There's Hugbot Incapacity. Oh, that's Starfinder. No wonder it's a robot. Dark Spellcaster and Flame Skulls. You can basically find whatever you want out here for D&D Minis from WizKids. Those are all individual. You've got the box sets like I was talking about. One thing I do want to talk about is a unique thing that they do that I have yet to buy any, I'm sort of interested in it, but the price point is a little pricey for me. And that is, they do sell, kind of like HeroClix, bricks of these miniature boosters. Now, a miniature booster typically comes with 4 or 5 pre-painted minis inside, and they're all kind of based off of a theme, if you will. So, for example, let's see, let me hunt one down. There's no, that's here we go. Let's see, where's the most related? All right, here's the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I don't remember when this one came out, but basically, this is, let me read it for you. The 20th is set in our Icon of the Realms line of pre-painted Dungeons and Dragons miniatures. Now, these boxes are square boxes, like cubes. They're not like the long boosters you might see for HeroClix. Think of it like if you did the Wheels of Vengeance HeroClix, that size of a box. Maybe a little smaller. Depends on the set. Some of them are bigger. I know there was a giant set recently. But basically, each set, if you will, is has about 50-something figures in it. They're randomly sorted in them, so it is kind of like blind picks. And these boosters typically come with one huge, it says here, huge boosters will have one of the following configurations: 1 huge or large figure and 3 medium or smaller figures, or it will have 5 medium or small figures. And now it's random. I don't remember if they really have a rarity. I assume they do have a rarity assigned to them. And you kind of got your blind picks for them. Now, I have debated a lot myself on how I feel about this type of product. HeroClix, it's a competitive game where you're playing with HeroClix, you're playing with those figures, and they have stats, and you're trying to collect them to play in a game. With D&D, if I'm a dungeon master, I just want the minis I'm going to be using, right? Like, I'm not building a team. Like, I'm not opening a booster and building a team out of it. Now, you could use it, I guess, for example, as a DM, if you don't want to story build, or you want some assistance in building out your campaign. I suppose you could buy a booster, open it, and whatever you pull, you include in your campaign. I kind of like that idea, actually. But otherwise, I'm looking at it. It's an 8 booster brick. There are certain pulls you can get from it. Now, the downside is these boosters aren't cheap. If you go to your local, you'll probably see these type of boosters, if it's a newer one, sitting around $25. Now, I guess it's cheap if you consider what you get out of it, but the blind aspect of it, blind purchasing, leads itself to, well, you might not pull what you want. And that's why I have yet to buy any, is because I'll look at a set and I'll say, well, I kind of want 1 or 2 things from here. But then I don't pull the trigger, because I know the likelihood of me getting the very specific things that I want is pretty low. So why don't I just go buy what I want? So I've always been interested on why they do it this way. I suppose with certain campaigns, like for example, if you're doing like I just said, the Curse of Strahd campaign, you could buy the specific ones for the characters, the citizens of Barovia, but they also have like the Guide to Ravenloft booster brick that you can buy. And these booster bricks cost about the same as a HeroClix booster. Like, I think they MSRP at $150 something for 8 boosters. So that's another key thing. So if you go out there and look, and you're looking at D&D Minis, you might see those kind of boosters out there. Keep in mind, these are mostly for DMs. If you're not a dungeon master, you're better off just buying individual, like just buying your what you want when you want it, right? Like, oh, I need a changeling. Okay, I'll go just buy the figure. Because you can buy singles, not from the Wizkids site, obviously, but you can buy singles from these boosters from any third-party retailers. A lot of online stores have these that you can sell. But I'm looking at here now, and I'm looking at, okay, back in 2020, they came out with an Eberron booster brick. And now I'm kind of wishing I bought it from my DM for Christmas, because this looks great. I would love to get some of these. Then again, I probably, as a character in this, wouldn't want to play against some of these. Oof, goodness. But let's talk a little bit about Critical Role. If you haven't heard of Critical Role, then that's perfectly fine. It's really taken the Dungeons and Dragons world by storm for the past 3 to 4 years. It is a very popular property. They stream on Thursdays. I am somewhat of a fan. I've listened to some of their campaigns, and it's a good podcast if you want to listen to it, like a good audio recording if you don't want to watch their live streams. But Wizkids produces a lot of Critical Role stuff as well, which Critical Role is outside of Wizards to a degree. Like, they create D&D, they play D&D, so there's like that unique partnership there. But they are also independent, like, because it's their own campaign. Now, there's a couple Critical Role books that they've made now for the D&D universe. But ultimately, WizKids does produce, and it's really ramped up in the past year or so, D&D Minis specific for Critical Role. So if you want to play any of those characters from the Critical Role campaigns, campaign 1 or 2, even 3 I think is out there now. Yeah, they have Bell's Hells out here. You can. The box sets typically come with like 8 to 9 figures, so the Vox Machina box set out here is $69, and it has all the main characters, even the bear. Trinket, I think, was his name. You have the Mighty Nine, which there's 9 figures. That one's actually sold out, but I believe it's around the same. And then you have Bell's Hells, which has 10 figures, and that's going for $79.99. But they have different creatures from Critical Role, because they know people like to create their own Critical Role campaign. They even have started making like plushies. They have a plush from the new campaign out there as well. And there's 5 pages out here on the WizKids store of Critical Role related products, which is insane, but also super cool. If you're into that type of campaign, you're into some of the stuff that they do, it's neat that you could just get minis from that set and play your own campaign. And with it being immensely popular, like it is by far, I would say, the most popular D&D related, like not Wizards specific, Wizards of the Coast specific property. I would say that Critical Role is the next, like, number 1. There's some very, very interesting things out here that they've made, and they released a lot this year as well. Like I said, the campaign 3 stuff they've created and put out there as, I believe, all painted outside of the different creatures. You can buy creatures from the set or characters. There's a half-elf Xhorhas Paladin that's unpainted, and it actually comes with 2 minis for $5. You could get a Goblin Sorcerer and Rogue Female, $5. And these are all unpainted. So the world of D&D Minis for WizKids is immense. If I was looking to get into D&D Minis, either purchasing some for my own character, which, for example, I am playing, like I said, in an Eberron campaign, I am playing a Changeling who has multiple characters that he turns into. So for me, I'm out there looking for, like right now, I'm looking for a half-elf. I forgot what she is. I mean, my character's a bard, but they try to fill in the role for a lot of things. So like maybe a half-elf bard or half-elf wizard-looking person. I'm looking for something like that I might paint myself and play at my local campaign. But, it's one where, once again, if you don't play D&D, thank you for sticking along this long in this episode. You may not find it that interesting, but D&D is immensely fun. a lot of theater of the mind, but these minis allow you to kind of take the theater of the mind out and put it on a map, and it's been great. Now, the other product I want to talk about that Wizkids makes is Warlock tiles, and I'm interested in what you all think about it, but also interested in what's going to happen with Warlock tiles. So Warlock tiles was something that was introduced, I would say, back in 2021. There was a big bump. Remember, going into COVID, D&D was on the rise thanks to things like Critical Role, Acquisitions Incorporated, a bunch of other shows were very popular. Going into 2020 is when really I feel like D&D exploded, because people could play online. They had to, because that was really the only interaction people had with due to COVID. And so D&D got immensely popular. Wizkids came out with something they call Warlock tiles. And so think of it like most people play on maps that are just dry erase board, or maybe they have a texture on them or some sort of artwork. But most people play that method, right? Pencil and paper is what they usually call it. Nowadays, with 3D printers and stuff like that, people have elevated their game or wanted to have something that represents more, kind of takes a little bit of the theater of the mind out, so that way you can have a more visual representation. Because a lot of people struggle with, maybe don't get into D&D because of they don't have a good theater of the mind, which is anything against them. It's just some people can't visualize things well. So Wizkids came out with their version of 3D printed terrain called Warlock tiles. And that's exactly what they are. They're floor tiles, there's walls, there's windows, and there's like little connectors you can connect it to. There's doors, all sorts of things. And so they introduced them as like big box sets. And then you could also go on their website and buy like individual pieces. Like if I wanted to get a wall, I can for like $1.50. That became really big in 2021. The downside to Warlock tiles is that they were kind of pricey. Actually, there's really no kinda about it. They were incredibly pricey. I know when I saw Warlock tiles, I was interested, and then when I saw the price, I was instantly not interested anymore, because it's hard to, it's a what's the word for it? It is it's an extra, right? It's something you don't need for your campaign. It's nice to have, but you don't need it. So, for example, if I were going to go buy Warlock tiles today, like the Town Squares base set out here, Town Square base set, which comes with, it doesn't even really tell you everything it comes with. I think that's because the website stopped working. Here we go. Base town and villages. Yeah, let's do that. So, base town and village 1. It comes with everything needed for a town or countryside scenario. It has 24 2x2 Warlock tiles. So the floors. Plastered walls, doors, pillars, and then all the clips you need to clip the tiles together. Wood beams, all of that. So like you can make a little room, like a little tavern or whatnot, and it's $100. For me, that is a lot of money to spend on something like that's a premium, effectively. Now, like all things, if I were to go out here on the good old Amazon and to look up Warlock tiles, I'm immediately greeted with that same town and villages thing that's $99 I can get for $76, which is still a little pricey for me. There's other ones out here that are for sale and cheaper. Dungeon tiles, there's expansions. Like there's a lot of Warlock tile stuff that they've released that is interesting. Like it legitimately is interesting. If you have that kind of money for it, more power to you. Funny enough though, if you go out there and look at the solicits for Warlock tiles, there's nothing, I believe, for 2024. There's a mat. They've introduced basically game mats that you put the tiles on, because obviously you don't want if you're playing in a big village, right? You don't want to have tiles for every bit of the road. So they've released now these game mats, but there's only one listed for April. And in 2020, oh, I'm sorry, that was 2023. They only released one thing for Warlock tiles. 2024, there's nothing. 2022, that's when a lot of accessories and game mats came out. So now I'm wondering if Warlock tiles is kind of going by the wayside. They haven't officially said whether they're getting rid of it or they're not producing anymore, but the solicits kind of tell the story. So, but yeah, I've been probably talking more than enough about D&D Minis. 2023, kind of as a recap of it, D&D Minis for Wizkids. You know, it's really difficult for me to say, oh, it was such a great year. They produced a lot. You could see it on all their solicits. They've gotten into a lot of painted minis, a lot of Critical Role stuff out. It's still going. And looking into 2024, that has not changed. There's a lot coming out in 2024, also for D&D Minis. Like I've mentioned multiple times, January, you have the Critical Role, the Darrington Brigade box set. You have a Hydra box miniature coming out in January. You have a Mind Flayer plushie, which I think is funny. In February, there's Icons of the Realm Bluffs battle map, which seems kind of neat. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff still coming out for D&D, as it should. D&D is still a very popular game. It's just going to keep getting more and more popular, more mainstream. I mean, we got a movie about Dungeons & Dragons this year. So it's hard to say that Dungeons & Dragons is not getting popular, which reminds me I need to watch that. I haven't seen the movie yet. So, either way, thank you guys for listening to this episode. I know I kind of just talked about D&D and D&D Miniatures for a while. I just kind of wanted to touch base on it because I don't really talk about the Dungeons & Dragons section of Wizkids, even though I feel like it makes a majority of their, like, the production is on D&D Minis. But I thought I'd talk about it a little bit. I won't talk about it every week. It'll be every once in a while. I'll talk about the solicits for it, sure. But if you like D&D Mini talk, and we could talk about some of the unique minis that are out there, talk about quality, stuff like that, let me know. I'll include it more in videos or on the podcast. So if you like this type of content, like D&D Mini talk, let me know. If you don't, let me know also, so that way I don't keep talking about it. But that'll do it for this episode of Whiz. I will see you guys on Wednesday for more Onslaught talk. We've got more kind of wrapping up the year and talking more about 2024. And then I might think of something fun to talk about also. So I will see you guys then. Have a great day.